Do you remember just last month, there was a series of WhatsApp voice notes and videos that got circulated, and it had content that was very personal to a certain individual. And why did this information get circulated? It was because the friends didn't maintain their confidentiality. And as a result, the whole country saw this content. And while it would have been entertaining and at the same time, it would have been appalling to some of us as well. But what we need to understand is that this individual was a victim of cyberbullying. And this is one of the very few cases that are brought into the limelight, and there are so many others like this. So, welcome. You have joined us with the phase 3 of Project Better Why, organized by the Rotaract Club of Colombo East and the Colombo YMCA. I am Sashini, and it's a pleasure to be the moderator for today's session. So, before we begin today's discussion, let me just thank our sponsors, the knowledge partner, Sri Lanka Computer Emergency Readiness Team, CERT, as well as the event partner, Flexus Lab, and the digital media partners, Daily Mirror Online and Lanka Deepa Online. Thank you so much for being on board with us and for making today's event a reality. So now let me begin by introducing our 5 distinguished panel of speakers. So first and foremost, this individual is a research analyst working remotely for a company based in the United Kingdom, and she has a background in human rights law with a specialization in cyberspace law and human trafficking. She completed her LLB honors at SOAS University of London and her human rights LLM at Queen Mary University of London, where she had the opportunity to study cyberspace law and explore the rights of the online persona, looking into the intersection between human rights, technology, and the digital world. She is currently in the process of launching an advocacy organization with the aim of strengthening Sri Lanka's response to abuse and exploitation, including those that take place online. Introducing to you Ms. Sashi Shafter. Ms. Sashi, if you could turn on your camera and just join us today. Hello, Ms. Sashi. It's so nice to have you with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sashini. Thanks for having me.
So our next speaker is an attorney at law, currently working as the head of programs at #Generation. She has worked for the government of Sri Lanka, attached to the Office on Missing Persons, Secretariat for Coordinating Reconciliation Mechanisms, Ministry of Finance, and many other government agencies. And she has experience in working with INGOs, NGOs, and volunteer groups. Her interest areas include civil and political rights, international relations, and advocacy for the rights of women and youth, to name a few. She obtained her Bachelor of Law degree from Faculty of Law, University of Colombo, and a master's degree in human rights from Faculty of Graduate Studies, University of Colombo. Introducing Ms. Nethmini Madhavala. Ms. Nethmini, if you could turn on your camera and join us today. Hello, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Sashini. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So the next speaker is an individual who is currently functioning as the Group Director CEO of CICRA Holdings, and he also holds the position of Board Director for the International Chamber of Commerce. He is a well-renowned individual with expertise and proficiency in cybersecurity, and also serves as the board director and the head of Cybersecurity Center of Excellence at the Sri Lanka Association for Software and Services Companies. He has raised his voice in a wide array of topics in panel discussions organized by the International Chamber of Commerce, American Chamber of Commerce, IT Professionals Association Candy, National Human Resource Development Council, and other well-established organizations. Presenting to you, Mr. Bhushan Dayaratna. Mr. Bhushan, if you could turn on your camera and join us today.
Hi, Sashini. How are you? Pleasure to be here.
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for being with us today. So next up, we have a prominent name in the field of data security, digital forensics, and e-discovery. So this individual has completed his Master of Science in Information Technology and the Master of Law degree in International Business at the Cardiff Metropolitan University. He is currently reading for his PhD in law at the University of Colombo, and he has functioned as an IT security professional in a wide range of well-established companies such as PwC, Sri Lankan Airlines, InfoShield Consulting, and 99X Services. He held the position of a global advisory board at the EC Council America, and currently by profession, he is a digital forensic and e-discovery manager at Pearson. So introducing Mr. Shanaka C. Kuge. Mr. Shanaka, if you could join us by turning your camera on.
Hi, Shalini.
Hi, Mr. Shanaka. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Last but not least, this individual is an ambitious cybersecurity enthusiast currently employed as an information security analyst at CERT. And CERT is also our knowledge partner for this evening. So he has many valuable experiences as a public speaker, panelist, media spokesperson, and a visiting lecturer. He is an expert in many areas such as incident handling, security policy development, website vulnerability assessment, and network security assessment, which makes him an expert in the field of cybersecurity and a valued panelist in this discussion. Presenting to you, Mr. Dina Dayalan Nagaratnam. Mr. Dayalan, if you could join us by turning your camera on. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Dayalan.
Thanks, Sachini. Thanks for the intro.
So thank you so much to all our speakers for taking time off their busy schedule to be a part of this discussion today. And this discussion is about virtual affairs. We'll be discussing about cyberbullying and cybersecurity, which is a topic we need to discuss in this day and age, especially with the advancement of technology and how much it has become a daily part of our lives. So let me start with the first question for today, and this is out to all 5 speakers. What are the frequently encountered types of cyberbullying and cybersecurity related issues? And what are your views or experiences on it? Maybe we can start with Mr. Dayaratnam.
Hi, Sashini. Thank you very much. I think it's a very good topic these days. Everyone is online, even the youth, either in your school or in your university, or even if you're working, everyone is working from home due to the global pandemic, which all of us are facing. So cyberbullying is getting quite serious now. So in a very simple words, it's basically bullying someone using the technology. It can be either through the social media or even text messages. Now, what we commonly see in cyberbullying is basically mostly through the social media activities, where either you try to impersonate a person or trying to harass a person or intimidating, things like that. So if you go back, why it is happening, mostly because most of us who are being bullied are actually not very much serious on your security side of whatever the social media the apps that you're using. So, and some also where keep on increasing your number of friends in the group, and some are not the real person who's who show that it is. So you got to be very careful in accepting friends into the groups. And also at the same time, we see people, the posts that you do. Now, one of the very common mistakes that a lot of people do on, especially on Facebook, is that where you put your instant updates where you are. And so it's very easy for a person to find out where you are. If you just search on your Facebook, you will know what you're doing. Some will say, look, I'm having a nice dinner at this particular place right now. So that's, you're giving information free of charge to anybody. And second, where you also see keep on posting pictures. Some probably would be very personal to you, and some you just keep posting, especially when you're out on a trip. So these are informations that can be taken for a person who wants to bully you, and take those photographs. And then, as we all know, the technology is so great these days that you can change faces, change clothes, change bodies, and so on and so forth. So these are the very common cyberbullying that we see, as also as what you just started saying last week, what happened on WhatsApp, video recording, and then sharing that with many people around. And today the gossip news travels much faster than anything else. So you got to be very careful. You should not be giving your opportunity for a person to bully you.
Thank you so much for your valuable insight. Maybe we can hear from Miss Sashi now.
Thank you, Sashini. I think there's a very simple answer to the question, and that's that technology is just used to facilitate something that has always existed. This kind of behavior has always existed throughout history. So this is just another way that it's being used. And because of how easy it is for teenagers and for adults and for everyone to access social media, it's used to perpetrate cyberbullying. So it's the accessibility, the anonymity that's provided by a lot of these platforms, and also the lack of accountability, particularly in countries where they don't have stringent legislation to combat this.
Right. Thank you so much for that. It is a growing concern that technology has kind of gotten out of hand, especially because people have less knowledge and a sense of morals when dealing with technology. So maybe we can hear from Miss Netmini now about her views on this particular topic.
Yeah. So after, Bhushan and Sashi spoke about what it means, right? The bullying part of it. I would, because there's another aspect to the question where what our experiences are from the work that I have done and the work I have involved in. The mostly what we see, at least in my space, is the cybersexual violence. This could be from sexting to sharing pictures of the genitalia, threaten to share the private messages, pictures, or exploit this intimate knowledge that a partner would have, cyber stalking, or it could also be these discriminatory memes or post sexist remarks. I mean, these are very, very common. We also see a lot of cyber harassment happening on the context of ethnicity and religion. This also amount to hate speech. This is really, really common, especially during the past couple, it has been in Sri Lanka for a long time, but we see an increase with the monitoring that we do in the past couple of years. I think, in my opinion, the main elements we need to consider when we look at cyberbullying or cyber harassment would be the respect that we have for each other and the level of privacy that's being violated. And I think most importantly for me would be the consent, especially because looking at cybersexual violence, if you share an intimate picture, the fact that you consented it to go to one person and then the consent being exploited is something that we have noticed. And this imbalance, the power dynamic also contributes, because we see women and sexual minorities getting disproportionately affected by cyberbullying and cyber harassment in Sri Lanka. And so when we engage with people, we also see the common thing, what people would say is that, it was made to be a joke. I was just kidding, or, you should know how to take a joke, sort of a line. To mask this, because to say that it's a harmless activity and it's just done for fun, but the problem is if the recipient doesn't find it funny, then it's not funny, right? So those are the things, my initial remarks on how my take on cyberbullying and my experience working with different people. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your insights, and it was truly insightful. And you brought in something very valid and something very relevant. And I'm pretty sure most of the viewers, myself included, would have experienced somebody we know, or maybe your own self, being exposed to this kind of behavior. And thank you for that. So maybe we can hear from Mr. Shanaka now about his experiences of
Yeah, thank you,
cyberbullying and
Shashi.
cybersecurity.
So in my experience, I think what I've seen is like, I agree totally with all three of you. I mean, Boshan what touched upon on the Facebook side, right? So we keep on adding people we don't know. So if you take my Facebook, no, it is very restricted Facebook. No one actually can add me. Maybe I'm being paranoid, but then again, I know the people who are in my Facebook. I know them physically. So these are not like strangers totally to me. At the same time, people should be aware that whatever you post online, it stays forever. So it will not be, you cannot delete such things, right? So it will be copied into multiple places, even Facebook, like, if you post something on Facebook, somebody can basically go and just share it, and then it will get copied again and again and again, right? So when it comes to cyberbullying, I think mostly the harassment I have seen, especially on a corporate environment, what I experience is that the misconduct, right? It can be in a sort of a started as a very lovely affair, and then it become really bitter at the end. So what people do not understand is like Netmini said, they are sharing their very private information, and they don't realize like what would happen if things go into the wrong side, right? And same time, I think that people should be very careful when they are talking to strangers online, and they should be even like be very particular in the things they're talking about. They should be aware, who they're talking to. So like that. So overall, I think it has become a bigger problem. Like, I have done my some research last few years back, and then I realized like, there is no literature that is going beyond 2004 on cyberbullying. So cyberbullying is something new, but like Shashi said, this has been going over and over in a different format. Now people have more access and more reachability. So, if you want to bully someone, just, go and create a new profile. You can be anybody you want, right? And you can just put up a Facebook profile, maybe add some sort of a nice picture. Maybe, I can pretend to be like a girl, and then, start doing that, cyberbullying, and try to get that, confidence, the trust among ourselves, like, in the others. And then, things can go really bad from there onwards.
Right. So, Mr. Shanaka, do you think social media has enabled more and more predators to find their victims in a way?
I think that you should never blame the technology, right? So the technology, like Shashi and everyone agree that this has something that we should be taken as a advantage, and cybersecurity and the cyberspace is actually like a double-sworded edge, right? So it's you can use it for betterment, you can use it for the worst case, right? So if I
Yeah.
really want to be using my social media, I can actually get them to go and do my learning. I can interact with so many people, to see the better side of it. And if you try to be positive, that's the way to do it. But then again, I have seen so many people actually, probably they do not have the proper education background, maybe not the proper social background, so they are feel like they are some sort of superhero when they come into social media. And like people say this joke every time I heard that your national identity card photo is never the person you are, and your Facebook is again not the person you are. So like you are in between somewhere there, right? So people trying to showcase, and you can, if you go to like Instagram, if you go to your Twitter account, people what I say is like they are publicly exposing their private life into the other people's, right? So even like Boshan said, we don't want to know where you eat today, what did you eat today, right? But then again, people like to have that show off, to be honest, and then they don't know where it ends up, right?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your views with us.
Thank you.
Mr. Dialan, would you like to add on?
Sure. I think most of the things have been covered, but how I see cyberbullying is that we've seen, I mean, it's just the way how it's done is using the technology. But bullying has been in existence since we've been in school, or it has always been there. But it's just that using technology, uh, we've just started bullying. It's just the way of doing bullying has changed. That is how I see bullying. And also, I just want to share some of the statistics now. It's important to understand the cases. Now, if you look at Sri Lanka, sir, we do this as now. This is not a mandate in terms of handling social media incidents, but still we do to support the societies, to support our constituents. Now, if you look at the total incidents that has been reported in 2010, it all started with 153 incidents, right? and then it went up to, in 2011, 1,469, and then again, let me say 2014, 2,368, then 2016, again, 3,907, and 2019, 3,866. Now, these are total number of incidents that has been reported, right? If I take 2019, for example, the number of social media incidents have been 2,662. That includes cyberbullying. Now, when I say these incidents, probably it includes of fake accounts being compromised, or your any sort of, yes, moreover, anything to do with I would say impersonation accounts and so on and so forth. But also looking at this year now, as we all have been working from home, we've had a lockdown, and the pandemic has changed things for us. It's not the normal thing that we are used to, and most of us have been working from home, and children have started schooling. Schooling from home, so things have changed. But if you see the incidents that has been reported till, I would say, okay, let's take from December to August. The number of social media incidents till August is 9,271, just the social media incident. Now, last year, the total incidents was around 3,000 odd. But if you see that just the social media incidents till, well, I can actually tell you till December, it's 12,503 incidents. So the total, so looking at the incident, it's a bit scary. The reason is that because I just feel that and the lockdown, did only allow people to be connected online. Anything and everything you can do is to stay at home. So a lot of incidents have taken place. It's sad, and I would say the main reason behind this is I think ethics are important. You need to follow ethics. Second, users are not being quite careful in terms of their safety on the internet. It's good to have any social media accounts, but how do you protect it is far more important. So yeah.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Dayalan. I think one of my questions was to address on the reasons for the existence of cyberbullying, but I suppose you covered that aspect as well. So thank you for that. My next question is out to Mr. Dayaratna. What do you think is what is cyber security, and how is it related to cyberbullying?
Yeah. So basically, cybersecurity, we are looking at someone accessing your data or information which is stored on the net or in any type of a system unauthorizedly. So any type of unauthorized access, to prevent any unauthorized access would be related to cybersecurity. It's a very vast subject, but in very simple words, that's I would explain now. And whether it is on a social media platform, or whether it's on a cloud-based platform, whether it's on a on-premised platform, say unauthorized, preventing an unauthorized action. So now when you say preventing an unauthorized access can be many ways. Now there are external people who are trying to access your corporate data or even your personal information. Now, there are people who are within the same network. Now, if you look at a company point of view, when you're in an organization, there are intranets. So each person is given either a laptop or a desktop and connection to your intranet. And that has access. Some organization where through investigations we have found many organizations have not blocked certain access based on your privilege. So someone get into your network, he or she will have access to all the folders or wherever the areas that you want to go in. That's one of the serious offenses in terms of networking. So it could be externally someone trying to come and steal your information, or it can be internally. So the internal is also, there are several sets of, internal can be, there can be someone on two payrolls. So, a competitor is, there is an advertisement has been put in for a particular job role. So the competitor sending his own person to apply for the job role. Obviously, he or she would be the most qualified person for the job, because working with the competitor has all the data of the competitor. So this particular company A may hire the person thinking that he is more suitable for the organization. Sometimes when you don't do a background search, that person can be stealing information while working. He has access to all those data and maybe taking and passing to the competitor. Or maybe somewhere 6 months down the line, or the probation period is over, he says, I don't wish to work in this company anymore, and he or she leaves. So when he leaves or she leaves, leaving with the data which is confidential for that particular organization. The second, what we see mostly is ignorant computer users. So I would say it's you and I mean, general basic users. I mean, the biggest mistake in the corporate world, lots of people think that cybersecurity is a role of the IT department. It's not my responsibility. So if something happens, it is the IT department or the CIO, someone who's into the IT department is responsible. Sadly, it's not so in the current and in the future as well. So if you have been given a laptop or a desktop with a network cable into your device, you are responsible for using that device securely. So I repeat again, ignorant computer user can bring a lot of information into the organization. One example, I would just say that there might be a link coming either way of an email or a text message or a WhatsApp message. And if you just go and click the link, then that can be a virus downloading or a Trojan or something of that nature coming in. So unfortunately, a lot of people at present is basically focusing on external attacks than the internal. So in cybersecurity, we need to look at internal and external both, and preventing such unauthorized access in a very broad base is what you call cybersecurity.
Thank you for that, Mr. Daratna. It's very evident there are a lot of factors that people need to consider, and not just one facet that is there to be considered. So moving on to my next question. This is out to Ms. Nethmini. Due to your background in law, I'm pretty sure you would have come across both perpetrators and victims. So what I'd like to ask is there a specific stereotypical profile that makes an individual fit into the role of a perpetrator or a victim?
Right. So I'm sorry, I'll be taking a very rights-based approach, right? I think from what we have seen, bullying is not new, like everyone has spoken about. It's time immemorial. We know it has been happening, but the way that the bullying happens has changed, right? That is the difference. And with that, I would say the stereotype of a bully and a victim has also changed. All of us, at least my personal experience is that in school, in university, mostly the ragging culture, all of that, there's this idea of a macho personality, the mob mentality, you like to be the powerful thug who wish, people to dance to their own tune, so you'll do those things. And, the people who are physically smaller or someone who would speak softer would get bullied. So that's something that we have seen, and the research also shows. But we see this changing slightly when it comes to online spaces, because like Sashi said, the anonymity mostly, because anyone can be a bully in this sense. And anyone, I think in my opinion, anyone with, it's a vicious cycle, the bullying, right? If you have been bullied, you think you need to bully someone else. And there's this inferiority complex, and you need to make someone's life miserable or get people to suffer. But this anonymity and the unaccountable behavior, thinking that there won't be repercussions, has changed. I won't say completely, but there's another element to who a perpetrator is, who a victim is, in my opinion. Anyone can be a perpetrator, and anyone can also be a victim, regardless of who you are, where you work, and where you come from. Because the way the messages can be communicated online with no connection to you, as opposed to previously, you have to have some sort of a connection to bully someone else. and the lack of physical contact. Anyone from anywhere, any part of the world can bully someone else, and you can impersonate. So this is something that we have very regularly come across with. So if you have a crush on a boy and someone starts messaging impersonating to be the particular boy that you like, you would constantly text, you would share your personal information, and to see it's someone else impersonating to be the person that you like. So that is something that we see very often, and how children are also being bullied with parents and teachers can not having any idea what's going on because of how social media is and the usage of mobile phones at a very young age. And I think there are key features that differentiate online bullying from offline bullying. But the fact that anyone could be a perpetrator, and we could be really good friends with someone. It could be your boyfriend, a really close intimate partner that you have been spending the life with for the past 5-7 years, but we also see them blackmailing the girlfriends, boyfriends, vice versa. I'm looking at women more because they are the predominantly affected by it, but I'm not in any form saying that men don't get affected by this. So yes, because of the less obvious consequences, the level of transparency, anyone think they could do something because it's not traceable. But I think the experts on the call would know it better than I do that it's traceable. So I think the paradigm has shifted a bit, because in the sense that you can be both a victim and a perpetrator. We have also seen the same perpetrator being victimized in the hands of another perpetrator, right? So you are a perpetrator, you are at the same time you're a victim. So it's a very confusing and complicated space, to be honest, because the more you deal with people, more difficult it gets to understand it. But I would say the mentality, what the common denominator or the thread would be from the offline bullies that we have read about or we have met while we in schools or universities, and now what we see online, the fact would be how their minds work, the power imbalance, how you would like to assert power by doing some very questionable things. So yeah, that would be my brief intervention.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Desmini. Okay, so the likelihood of individuals facing the risk of abusive behavior on this online platform widely ranges depending on how active you are on social media and how frequently you use it. Ms. Sashi, why do you think social media sites have become ideal environments for people to be exposed to bullying?
I think there are three main factors that we can focus on when considering this question. So the first would be accessibility. It's so common now to be on social media. The world has changed and social norms have changed to the point where you're seen as odd if you refuse to get on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or WhatsApp or whatever it is. So it's just way more common now. Social media is the norm and everyone is on it. It's also very easy for kids to get on it, particularly if they don't have supervision. It's very easy to fake your age. I mean, when I was in school, people used to fake their age when creating a Facebook account because Facebook has a minimum age, but it's who's enforcing that, right? Like people would just put a fake birthday and then they'd make Facebook accounts. Also, for kids who don't have parental supervision, if their parents aren't on social media or they don't understand how it works, it's a very confusing environment. If you're not used to it, if you haven't grown up using these kind of technologies, it's very confusing. And so there's a lack of accountability even at home. There's also a lack of accountability in a broader scale where not all countries have legislation to deal with the types of violence, cyber sexual violence, abuse, cyber abuse, and cyberbullying as well. So there's that broader issue of accountability and how accountability can be brought about. There's also a lack of awareness on what's ethical and what's not ethical on social media, right? I mean, for kids who are figuring out this new thing by themselves, they don't really have a lot of guidance sometimes on what's okay, what's not okay, what's okay to say, what's okay to comment. The fact that, you know, there are so many huge privacy concerns. Kids will be doing TikTok dances, posting those videos on Instagram, on public accounts. They have no idea how it works. They don't know exactly who's viewing their content. They don't know if people can save those images or those videos. So there's just a lack of awareness on how social media works and how it can be exploited. Again, there's a huge lack of awareness on the types of crime that can take place and the bad things that people can do online, particularly with kids. Because if you don't even know what people are capable of on social media, then you don't know how to protect yourself, right? And I think one thing that is really important to consider here is that when bullying was limited to the physical world, when you were just bullied, say in school, as soon as you got home, you were safe. With social media, you're no longer safe when you get home. People can access you, they can contact you at any point in time. There are no boundaries and there are no barriers unless people consciously put them in place. And so you're just that much more vulnerable on social media than you would otherwise be if you were only able to be bullied in school or in person. Your parents can't protect you in the way that they could, a generation ago. They can't. You can be in your room and no one can know what's going on. And we also see huge amounts of suicides which take place. Basically, there's a huge link between suicide and cyberbullying as well. And sometimes it takes suicide for parents to even know that their child is dealing with these kinds of issues. So there are several factors, and also we've already touched on anonymity, but that's another thing that makes it so easy on social media to engage in these types of behavior, because it's easy to hide behind a screen and there's a detachment and a removal from the actual real world consequences of this type of behavior.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Sashi. It's evident that parents need to be a bit more involved when assisting and guide their children when it comes to using technology. My next question is out to Mr. Daman.
Excuse Sashi, can I add one more point in that too, if Sashi don't mind?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah, I think one of the very common mistakes on using the social media that everyone faces is that having a very weak password in your social media account. So sometimes you can even guess the password once you go through your social media first few pages. For example, if you have a pet, the pet's name, most probably the password of your account. So people guessing passwords and going in is one of the key things, and then they take control of your account, and thereafter then you start bullying, because I mean, when you lose your account, then you have basically, if you're heavily on the social media, it's like you lost your life. All your friends, everybody there. And when somebody start impersonating you and posting information, that becomes very intimidative, and then that's where you lose all control. So first thing I would tell all the listeners, you got to have a very strong passwords. And passwords, second, I would say the passwords should not be shared with anyone for any reasons. Now, there's a very common thing which we see that, when someone in love, you share your social media password with your other loved ones. And when you refuse to do that, then you will ask why you don't love me or you don't trust me. Is that why you are not sharing the password with me? So then it's again another type of bullying. So if the boyfriend is not willing to share the social media password with the girlfriend, then she starts thinking that you have a hidden life behind the social media. So for you to prove that, sometimes you may share it. It might happen the vice versa. And then you see when someone is ending the relationship, obviously the other party does not know until the message or the news breaks out. So if you have the password, and what you will automatically do is that you change the password, and to a password which only you know, and then you break the news to your partner, say, look, we are done now. So then you start, if you want to insult the person, or if you want to keep doing the wrong messages to send to all their friends in that, so that person is impersonating as in doing it. This is very, very common among the youth. So I'm sorry I've taken a couple of minutes away from Sashi. I thought this was very important to share. And my message to everybody is, you can share your toothbrush if you're in love, but not the passwords.
Thank you, Mr. Dayaratna. I think toxic relationships are a whole other conversation we need to have with the youth. So moving on, the next question is to Mr. Dayalan. Are you aware of any safety measures which social media apps currently have in place to protect their users from cybersecurity issues?
Yes, Sachini. Now, if you look at any social media platform, they've given you they've given you the provision. I mean, the settings. It's just that the users need to put things in place, because we see people creating, for example, it can be a Facebook account, Instagram account, or it can be WhatsApp. But how many of us look into those settings? When I say settings, there are two things which is quite important here. One is the security settings. Now, Boshan did touch upon that. When I say security, the measures that you can take to protect your account, that is more important. Because if someone can gain access to your account, you know for a fact that they would know each and everything, who you've been messaging, what you've been doing, all your personal things get leaked out. So you don't want someone else to have access to your account. No one wants that. So the first defense that you can have is to have a password, right? So like Boshan said, you got to have a strong password. Sometimes people find it difficult to have different passwords for different account. That is also another important thing, because mostly people have the same password for Facebook, same for Gmail, same for Yahoo, same for Instagram. As soon as one of their accounts gets compromised, the entire things goes away from them, and then they wonder what to do. So again, the provisions are being given. So one thing is security settings. So having a strong passwords. So sometimes you can have passphrase than a password, because now there are different ways how you can store passwords. Best thing is to store it in your mind, and you don't write it down. That's more important, because people write things down on the diary, on their phones, and when it's lost, everything is gone. So it's important. So maybe you can just come up with a phrase in your own mother tongue or any language that you prefer, and then you add a bit more characters towards that, so that for each and every different accounts, you could easily have a password. Okay, that is one. The second thing is there's something called a two-factor authentication. Now, that is once you verify your phone number or your email address with a certain social media platform, they verify that it's your number. So right after that, so every time you log into your account on any particular browser, your code will be sent to you. So without that code, we call it an OTP, one-time password. So without that, you will not be able to log in. So it's important that people enable this. So even if you've enabled, even if you've got a simple password, but if you enable the two-factor authentication, without the code, the other person will not be able to have access. But sadly, some people do share that OTP. We call it social engineering. People just call you for different things, and then you just give out without knowing what it is. The second thing is privacy settings. Now, when I say privacy settings, I'll give you some examples so that our users will understand better. So one thing is, for example, you can always decide who can see your friend list. You can always decide who can see your post. You can always decide who can tag you on a video or a photo or anything, right? So these settings are being given. Now, it's not just on Facebook, on Instagram, on WhatsApp. You can check it out. These settings are being given. So it's important as users, we enable that. That's the first thing that we should do as we enroll into any accounts, that we start using it. It's important that we make sure that we have enabled the right settings on our privacy and security settings. Yes, the social media platforms have been given. It's just the users don't practice.
Thank you, Mr. Dialan. I think it was very helpful that you gave our viewers some sort of guide on how they should create their password. So thank you for that. My next question is out to Mr. Sikuge. How might cyber bullies use social media to shield their true identities from their victims? And why does the ability to remain anonymous seem to encourage cyberbullying?
Okay, so before that, I would like to touch a little bit on the Facebook part. Now, I've been the only IT guy in my home. I had to remember everyone's password, right? So it's like a difficult job right now. So what I do right now is, having two-factor for everyone. So every time they don't forget the password, I just say, you have your phone, you can always reset, right? So every time they either change their phone or change their browser, this has been the problem. And when it comes to, I done some research papers for the Commercial High Court, Sri Lanka, on the WhatsApp evidence, and I realized that you can actually change your number and you can actually keep that number as long as you want. Now, for example, I have changed my number when I was in US last year, and I still use that number because I just want to do like as a testing, and I changed my phone, but still with my backup coming from my phone, it just changed it back to the actual the US number. So I still use it. So it doesn't actually ask me to change it. So basically now I can be anyone, right? So I can basically give my grandmother's ID card and buy another SIM card. Then I can create my own profile, right? So when it comes to cyberbullying using social media, I think it's we call this behind the mask, right? So there are no boundaries. Like Netmini said, there's no boundaries in here. You can be anyone at any time, and you can assume any role you want. Like what I've seen is that people, they are more trying to experience these fantasies, I would say, because these are the things that they can't actually have in real life. So basically they're trying to create that persona into that profile, and they try to be somebody who is not them. And when it comes to cyberbullying, the biggest difference I see from rest of the bullies is that they are not those these strong people that we have seen our school ages, right? So we have seen these big boys and they try to eat our food and take our money, but these are the guys. It's not the same thing now, because what I have seen is that these are the people probably weak, and they do not have that personality come out and face the real society. So they try to create that fake profile, and they try to be somebody who they are not, right? So they can be this soft person that we talk about. They can be this person who is being bullied again and again in their school time. So this is something what I've experienced, like from my recent research, I've seen that this is not the real bully we have seen in our physical world, right? So it's a cyber world. And same time, what I've seen is that being anonymous, like you can be who you want. You can also cover your tracks, right? So you don't actually be, you can actually use a VPN, and with a VPN, you can log in from anywhere. You can create your profile from even from US or UK, and it doesn't actually, like Shashi said, it doesn't ask for your verification. Like I can be a 13-year-old, I can create my profile as an 18-year-old, and I can be maybe a pedophile, and then I still can create my own profile. I can be somebody else, right? So when it comes to the legal part, during my research, I noticed that there are a lot of procedural law, but the substantive law is not there when it comes to cybercrime. Especially the cyberbullying. I remember that when I was doing my MSc in cybercrime, I just remember that I talked to the so many authorities, and what they have told me is like the Computer Crime Act does not cover most of the things, but we have the penal code. So we go to the penal code, we take the extortion, right? And extortion, right? And then we talk about getting that through. So, but like I said, do not blame the technology, because technology is not here to get the blame. It's the people who use the technology, right? So another thing what I noticed, like we have getting our mobile phones smarter and smarter, and we have become dumber and dumber every day, right? So we are using, like we used to remember, like if you ask me in childhood, like if you ask somebody's telephone number, I could have just tell you off, right? But now if you ask even your girlfriend's number, you will not remember it. But because you have everything now given to the technology, and you're trying to now blame the technology for taking that. And the same time, everyone is talking about being connected, everyone getting connected in the future, right? But what I say is that the trend will change. We will see a disconnection, and because people try to see that they are not in the real world, they will try to open their eyes and to come out into the real world, and they actually try to get a physical because now every time when you go for a dinner or lunch, people are in their phones, So they are not enjoying that. They are not even like, in their present time, right? So they are in their own different world. And what I see, another thing is like, there's an extra layer of protection for the cyberbullies since they are in a world of no boundaries. And at the same time, the victims are not aware of they are being bullied. So that's another part, right? So they do not know that they've been bullied. Sometimes they just want to fit into the society. Sometimes, let's say it's a group of people and he's been bullied again and again, and this person try to fit into that society because he thinks if I'm being part of this special group, I'll be someone special, right? But then he doesn't know that he's been taken to this group just to bully, just to take the mickey, right? So that is what I have seen. And the same time, I experienced that uh, people do not know like where to report, to who to report when it comes to bullying. And the same time, people have different tolerance level as well, right? So I know like sometimes I don't say I get bullied, but sometimes people take the mickey, but I know I'm really tolerable to certain things, right? But some people it might get really crashed down, and it can actually end up into a suicidal, like Sashi said. And the same time, it can be a very embarrassing situation, right? And people do not want to disclose that to the public, right? So if we talk about all those that the island has mentioned, that does not represent the countrywide, right? That is maybe 5%, I would say. I mean, because people are not really want to go into that procedure and to get exposed, and because if it goes to courts, what would happen in courts, your the whole image get tarnished, and your opposing lawyer can actually take you to gutters, right? So I mean, I'm not blaming the lawyers here, but then again, this is what would happen, right? So that's why people, they don't want to come out and say, okay, I've been bullied, I've been a victim, right? So I don't think that will happen again, and so even in the future, I don't think that will happen.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Shankar, for sharing your views. The next questions are actually about the legislature in Sri Lanka. I'd like to hear about the current system in place from Ms. Nethmini. So basically, what are the laws that are currently prevalent in our country for cyberbullying? Is it sufficient? And how can somebody actually go about if they have been bullied, cyberbullied? Yeah.
So I'll be speaking again from my experience. I think Shana covered most of the things, right? I think stats earlier shared by Dylan about the exponential growth in the cases. I think it's like less than 10 to 20% reporting, right? I mean, people just don't come and report. This is out of the ones that are reported, we are at 12,000. So it's a deeply problematic trend. I might take a little more time explaining this. I think the legal regime in Sri Lanka is not sufficient at all, right? It's absolutely sad. Like Shanaka said, what we do is there are legal provisions here and there, we borrow and use it. Now, example, the penal code, because we don't have a law on cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is not a separate offense in Sri Lanka. With all this advocacy, with all this speaking about it for a long time, I still don't understand why it's not a law, but it's not. What we have is the penal code. Penal code is the criminal law of the country, and you can look at cyberbullying. You can make cyberbullying an offense through those provisions in the penal code, the criminal law. It could be under the sexual harassment provision, or the extortion provision, or the criminal intimidation provision in the penal code. Now, the problem with the penal code is that you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt, right, to make it an offense. And proving beyond reasonable doubt, especially in our court system, it's actually a task, right? The degree of proof is so high that it becomes really difficult to prove. And I think Shanaka must have, he said he was in court about WhatsApp, so he knows how difficult it gets and how bloody it gets. And we also have this act called Obscene Publications Act ordinance. So it also deals with it if you are sharing an edited intimate image without consent. And you have Computer Crimes Act. I think again Shanika very well dealt with it. You have provisions, but they're not sufficient, because they say if you do something using a computer that would cause danger or an imminent danger to the public order of the country. Now, public order of the country is really loose. No one has defined it. So, it's very, very difficult to prove, especially in court. So we have seen cases failing one after the other. And we also have the National Child Protection Act. If it's a child who's being bullied, so that can be covered under the child abuse. So you can see, unless you are a lawyer working on it, it's very difficult for any layman to understand what the law is, because you have to look at so many different things to understand where you are, what the law is, what the punishments are. And even if you have someone with legal savviness, still to get a conviction in court is a task. So what we generally do is, now if someone comes to us with these issues, or if we see someone being bullied, we will reach out. The one thing we would do is we will direct them to report to CERT, because we have seen things happening. So we would report it to CERT, or we would encourage them to go to the CID cybercrimes division. That is one option. And the women and children desks in police stations, we would direct them there. And of course, if it's a child being abused, it's the National Child Protection Authority. And because the thing is, people don't report, right? This 12,000 stat is very alarming at it, because mostly because it's only like 10% reporting and 90% not reporting. People don't report because they're scared. They don't know what to do. They don't even know that it's a problem. A lot of women I have met getting pictures of random people's genitalia. They don't see it as a problem because it's so constant. It has been a regular occurrence in their lives. They're like, I have to just shrug it off and move on. But right, that's the problem. You don't see it as a problem. And they are embarrassed to come out and talk about it, like Shanak said, because there's a lot of stigma around it. And it takes a long time to any of these to get materialized, because the courts take time, the police take time. So, because you wouldn't want to invest 2 or 3 years of your life in a court case when you would pick the option of, I'll just move on. And so we, in those instances, we also recommend them to go to a couple of groups like Grassrooted Trust or Women in Need, who would actually give them legal aid, help them out, to really come out of it, in the sense it's legal side or the psychosocial support side also. Our experience with this reporting mechanism is that, they're not always effective. We see a lot of victims get re-victimized because of this victim blaming. We have seen, especially in police, when someone goes there to say, there's a revenge porn that is out, or there's a picture that goes out, what can I do? The first question would be, why did you send it? Right? You shouldn't have sent it. Or to say, a girl brought up in good values and a good family, what were you thinking? As opposed to who sent it out. Like I said, coming back, rights-based, consent-based. No, that's not the concern as to why you sent it, and becomes victim blaming. And obviously the person gets so much bogged down in the situation, they wouldn't see anything out of it. So people don't want to report. And I also see, this is because we're talking about it, when we go to court or when we speak with people, we see people immediately delete even the strand of evidence that they have, right? So get a picture, they immediately delete. They get a link, they immediately delete. The idea, what I can say is that please don't. Even if you have to maintain a different folder and save every picture that you have been getting, even screenshots, much better, because you can prove something in court. Keep it. Because I know it's sometimes you feel you have done something wrong, but I wouldn't say that, especially when it comes to sexual cyber violence, especially because it's so prominent. So those are the things. What I said was, this is the law. The law is, long, complicated. If you don't want to do that, these are the places that you can report to. But what you can do is, if you don't know what to do on your own, reach out to someone who could help you, that would know what to do next. Trying to figure everything out on your own is not going to help always. So yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Nethmini. I'm pretty sure our viewers would deeply benefit from the information that you just provided. So thank you for that. And my next question is out to Mr. Dayalan. So you are a part of CERT, and it's the focal point for cybersecurity in Sri Lanka. And I would like to know what are some of the projects that CERT does to assist victims of cyberbullying and the preventive measures taken by CERT to prevent cyberbullying and other forms of cybercrime.
Hi, hope you can hear me. Yes. So one thing that we do is to conduct awareness sessions, because awareness is one of the greatest remedy. Because the more and more people are aware of safety measures on the internet, so they could safeguard themselves. And this is all free. So we do conduct awareness sessions. We've recently started doing some live sessions on Facebook, on our Facebook. So we go live every other week, my colleague and myself, and we speak on different, basic things just to make people aware. Then we also do awareness on request when someone wants to do awareness session. Now you invited me to be part of this, So like even to school, to government organizations, private organizations, depending on availability, we try and attend, and we try. So and also, what I also want to let the audience know is that you can do this awareness in different ways. It's not just about someone coming on speaking on a topic. That is one thing. You can always circulate posters, for example. Now we did create some posters a couple of years back for school. And we did through the education ministry, and we did pass it on. The information was from CERT, and then we had a few other organizations um, who did support towards that, and we did circulate that. So that you can have some flyers hanging around. You can send some messages, email messages. So it's just about being a bit creative. So awareness is the only option that I see. And also, what help we provide towards these victims are, one is, as you know, that CERT is not a legal entity. We are not a law enforcement authority. So people get sometimes hurt, but that's the truth, because we are not a law enforcement authority. And probably I could say that this is the only CERT where people in the world could approach to, because CERTs are hidden environments. Like, you can't go to a CERT. That's how it is in other part of the world. But we unfortunately, I think people should be fortunate that they could approach us. And again, we do this as a support, because this is not, again, a mandate, but we don't say no. But how we support the victims are, one is, the most things happens through fake accounts or impersonation accounts. So sometimes when as impersonation account, someone's photo is taken and then impersonate like them. So that we help the individual to report, because all these provisions are given by Facebook or the social media platforms, but people do not know how to report and get rid of their fake accounts or impersonation accounts. For example, we Google for a lot of things. So one thing I would like also to the viewers is to Google for things. So just Google, how do I report or remove a impersonation account? It's given, right? So that is one. So if that does not work, so we have connection with Facebook and a few other entities. So we get certain information from the user, and then we send it off to the relevant organization, and they remove it, right? It all depends if that does not violate their privacy. So let's say someone's account is compromised. Then what we do is, again, through our connection, we get this information as per the request of Facebook, and we pass it on, and they remove the account off. So sometimes people come out saying that personal videos have been leaked. So simple, if someone's video has been leaked on a Pornhub, or it could be any sort of porn site, simply go to that site, and if you report it, you write it to them, they will take it off, right? So people aren't aware of that, so they come to us. But still, yeah, what we do is we write to those relevant websites, and they take it off. So sometimes we hear people's phone numbers being posted on gossip sites. So yeah, again, the same thing. And some of these gossip sites, you can't find the owner, the registrant, I mean, who actually owns the site. That becomes a bit of a difficult task. So again, but we write to the hosting provider, and as you say that, as we introduce ourselves so and so, and most likely they take it off. So these are the things that we do to help the victims. And again, it's just only technical support, because sometimes people say, okay, we want to find out the person behind this. I want to know who has done this. Now, yesterday, I can tell you, for instance, there's a gentleman, and he said his wife's account got compromised. And then he's like, okay, now, then I said, okay, what we can do is to help you to take that account off through Facebook. And he said, okay, that's fine, but I want to find out who the person is, right? Where do they live? So sometimes people don't understand, and because these information will never be shared with CERT, because we are not a law enforcement authority, but with the police. So again, your first contact point, again, if you've been a victim of cyberbullying, you should go to the police. And yes, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Diana, for that information. Ms. Shafter, my next question is out to you. Since you have a background on the human rights laws and cyber security and all that, based in UK as well, what are the notable differences you see between UK and Sri Lanka in terms of the way cyberbullying and cybersecurity is dealt with, and what can we do to make the system better?
So I think, I mean, because I have a legal background, I always look at the law first, right? How can legislation be improved to provide a stronger framework to combat these issues? The UK, for example, has very strict legislation dealing with child pornography, which is actually not even the term that's used in the UK and internationally. Child pornography has been rejected as a term. So they actually refer to it as indecent images of children, because the term child pornography suggests that children can consent to taking part in pornography. And since children legally cannot consent to sexual intercourse, it would then follow logically that they cannot consent to being in pornography either. So the UK has very strict laws regarding child pornography or indecent images of children. Sri Lanka doesn't have specific laws dealing with that type. In general, pornography is illegal in Sri Lanka, but it's so widely consumed that's not enforced at all. It's so easily accessible, and we don't have any specific legislation which deals with that. We also do not have specific legislation. It's already been mentioned by the other speakers, but legislation to combat cyberbullying. Another type of crime and of abuse online that takes place is revenge pornography. Again, very problematic term, because it suggests that there's, it kind of gives it credibility when you say it's revenge, because usually you take revenge when you have been wronged, and that's not what actually takes place. So it's where, with consent, people have shared nude images or sexually explicit messages or images, and then those are then shared by the person they shared them with without their consent. We don't have specific legislation dealing with that here, but the UK does have specific legislation to combat those types of crime which take place. So that's something that could be improved here. But I think, leaving the legislation aside, it can be very intimidating, I imagine, if you've faced these kinds of issues, to get help. So Sri Lanka is so conservative, right? Our culture is conservative. It's not easy for kids to talk to their parents about these kind of things. And even leaving aside parents, it's not even easy for adults to get help when they have these kinds of issues, because we have a shame culture, right? So you would worry about what your family might say. You would worry about what your friends might say. You'd worry about what your workplace might say if you do have a job. And that is something that is very, very difficult to overcome, because for that, social norms need to change and our culture needs to become more open and more accepting. And that's a much longer process. That kind of change is much harder to achieve. I think in Sri Lanka also, for example, we do have a National Child Protection Authority, but how many kids know the NCPA helpline? How many kids even know there is something called the NCPA? Not a lot, right? I asked my cousin who's 13, she'd never heard of it. So how helpful is it to have these organizations and these mechanisms in place if potential victims don't know how to access them? Even Sri Lanka CERT, a lot of people won't know that they can even go to Sri Lanka CERT for help. And if they go to the police and they find that intimidating, then it might just stop there. So I think because of all the bureaucracy that exists and all these barriers that exist, it's very, very hard for people to access help. And that's a huge thing that could be improved in Sri Lanka. So actually, when I moved back in 2018, I moved back from the UK after completing my master's, I thought about this and I realized that there was a gap in the law here and also just in Sri Lanka's response to these types of things. And because I'd studied the UK and EU response, it was quite easy for me to compare the two and then see the gaps that existed. So I'm in the process of launching an advocacy organization because I'd ideally like to make this process easier, like Tala mentioned, creating awareness, having workshops in schools, workshops for kids, workshops for teachers, workshops for people who work with kids. One thing in Sri Lanka that we don't have is that we don't really have a process where people who are exposed to children have to go through a background check before they're cleared to work with children. That's something that's very strict in the UK. So not anyone can just work with children. Here, it's very common that kids who are exposed to abuse face abuse at the hands of people who are meant to be trusted individuals like teachers, coaches, relatives, things like that. So in Sri Lanka, that's something that we could introduce as well to improve our overall response to this kind of thing.
Thank you, Ms. Sashi. It's evident that there's a lot of stigma following being a victim of cyberbullying, and there's a lot to do with changing the mindset. And on that very note, my next question is out to Mr. Dayaratna. So this question is about whether the Ministry of Education should incorporate cyberbullying and cybersecurity awareness into the school curriculum.
I think they have already included the ICT into the curriculum, which is a good way forward. But unfortunately, the cybersecurity and cyberbullying is actually, I don't think so far included. It's a good suggestion. Now, as you told at the beginning that through the /com, Sri Lanka Association of Software and Service Companies, which I am part of, we have created a national cybersecurity forum where we are going to work with all the government and non-governmental schools and also the universities to keep pressurizing them to include cybersecurity as one of the contents, at least areas that should be included into the students. Now, as the Alan also mentioned, the best way forward right now is what you guys are doing. This is kind of an awareness session where you get all the youth and everyone who's using a device. I don't think today you can find anyone who's not using a smartphone, and the smartphone is a computer itself. So it's an awareness where you tell them how to use the technology securely than blaming the technology. There's no way back. I mean, there's no one going to go back to this, the old books and the papers. So it's only way forward. Now, so with the universities and the schools getting awareness programs such this and embedding the cybersecurity into the curriculum is a way forward. But as a national initiative through this /com, we are also working with all these universities. Other than that, from our organization as a SICRA, as a corporate social responsibility, we do have this cybersecurity awareness programs into schools. We go into schools, we conduct programs in very large scale, and also we give certain material for them to keep it with them. So especially we focus on cyberbullying and using online platforms securely. So we give them material for them to keep. It's just not only a presentation and coming back. So I think it should be done, but unfortunately right now it's not yet done.
Yes. So hopefully in future it might be implemented and it would be beneficial to the younger audiences who will one day be using more technology in the future.
I need to keep pushing the education ministry to implement this into the system.
Yes, indeed. So my next questions are to Mr. Shankar. So we spoke about the school curriculum, but do you think that children and students as well as youth need to understand the concept of ethics, the principles involved, what consent is, what maintain confidentiality is. These basic principles need to be understood by the youth, and particularly in communities where such dialogue doesn't take place in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now, what I see is that, especially the youth, they just want to get a smartphone. They don't think twice before they go and create a Facebook profile or Instagram profile, and they don't think twice before they, put their videos on a TikTok or maybe into, WhatsApp, messaging in the group, and sometimes even just clicking the links they get through WhatsApp to, connect to another group. So they don't know what they are sharing. They just keep going on and on and on, and there's a huge gap in between the actual knowledge here. So I think it's better that, if we have some sort of mechanism that we should be able to help these younger kids now, especially with the IC squad. I'm part of the President Column chapter. We have something called Safe and Secure Online, which is mainly focused on the students as well as the parents. So we conduct 2 sessions for school children, and another one is for their parents. So one thing is, you have to basically teach your student, kids that, what is right, what is not right. So, at the same time, being ethical, it's a social behavior. It's a social, I think, people, for me, what is ethical might not be ethical for somebody else, right? So it is, again, changes from the social environment they're in. Some of them are, in a very rich, coming from rich families, some of them are from poor families. So they think that, okay, there's a big difference in there. But then again, when it comes to technology, I don't think there's any difference here, because, it's the same kids, they're trying to get into Facebook, and probably somebody from a low economic background, would be posting something about his, day-to-day life, or somebody, from a different background, would be posting their, social life, going to clubbing and all those things. But then again, they should be aware that, just because they have access to the whole internet, just because, they are, having that good time, we should not be, ready to, go and expose that to the different parties. And what might come back, can really hurt them, right? So some of them actually make me touch as well, that sometimes we see that, people start sharing so many things and they don't realize, what would happen if things go wrong, right? So being ethical, I don't think you can teach at a young age, but then again, it's the parents' duty to actually, because most of the parents, what I say is like, they say, okay, Puta, no tablet today, no phone today, right? But then again, as soon as they try to restrict it, these guys, this younger generation, they really want to have it now, right? So they want to see, they want to explore more. So you have to tell your kids that, when you want to explore, it's okay, because even when you were kids, we remember that, when you're trying to climb into a tree or something, parents will say, Puta, vete, so, just be careful, right? So we don't want our children to take the risk. But then again, I think they should go and take the risk. But then again, you only need to show them the right path, to show them what is the ethical path you should take. You need to be ethical in this world. There are people with different social backgrounds. There are people with different problems. You might actually see somebody coming from even from richer family. He or she might have a different problem at home, right? Maybe their parents have got divorced and a lot of problems at home. So that doesn't make that person in a different person, right? So we all have to socially accept, for you who you are, not from anything else.
Right. Thank you so much for your input, and it was indeed intriguing and very insightful. So we have reached the final bit of today's discussion, but the last question is out to all of you, all 5 panelists. So what is the advice that you can give the youth of Sri Lanka to be virtually safe in this community? Maybe we can get some insight from Mr. Diana first.
Island, right? Okay, right. What I would say is that first thing is when you're on the internet, please make sure that you're um, uh, enabling the settings, privacy and security settings. That should be one of the most important thing when you're on the internet. Don't, I mean, it's good to use the technology, not to stay back, but make sure you're not sharing your personal information with anyone. I would not encourage anyone to share with anyone. The reason is you share it with someone you know, and if their devices do get compromised, then your photo gets leaked out, right? So it's not wise. And today you're just youths, and tomorrow you can become a prominent person in Sri Lanka or in the world. You don't know what your future holds. So that's important. That's what I always say. And another thing that we got to remember is that, and as sometimes people say, you know what, I can delete it, it's taken off, you know, it gets archived, you know, it gets, once you leave a fingerprint, you know, it stays, and someone or the other person or an organization, they do archive things. So maybe it has just gone out for now, and when you become prominent, it could come out. So you don't want that. That's going to create a bad image for you, right? And another thing is, if you're being bullied, if someone is harassing you, get help. Like most of the panelists said, go and speak to someone. If you're a child, feel free to speak. I think the number is 1928. NCPA, dial them and speak to them. Or else go to your teacher, go to someone who can speak to. Because don't keep it silent. The more and more you keep it to yourself, you're harming yourself more. And this is where it leads to a different stage. So yeah, that is how I would like to tell the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nithmini, would you like to add on?
I think I completely agree. The fact that please don't keep it to yourself and reach out. There are people, I mean, but be careful in reaching out, right? You could be reaching out to another one who's waiting for someone to come and exploit you more. So speak to someone that is responsible, speak to someone that you can trust, reach out, because we have seen a lot of youth struggling because they don't want to speak to anyone. And I think don't blame yourself, but also be responsible. So it's a fine line. You have to do certain things so that you are safer in cyberspaces. But just because you couldn't do something, that doesn't give someone else to come and violate your privacy. So be aware of both things. But my request would be to reach out to someone that you can trust. Yeah.
Great. Mr. Shantha, is there anything you'd like to share with our viewers today regarding the advice?
So one thing I would say is, rather than the youth, I think I want to touch the parents here, because I think parents, play a bigger role here, and they should always, give that freedom so their children can come and talk to their parents. Because I've seen a lot of children are scared to go and talk to their parents, right? So, and the most of the time I've seen, people are actually listening to reply. They're not listening to understand, right? So whenever you start saying something, they just, jump into the conclusion. Okay, it's like more like Google, right? So when you just type in something and just, try to say something else, right? So have that listening mindset, have that good understanding, and keep in that open space for your children. That, that will be really helpful in this future, especially in the pandemic situation. I think you have seen a lot of things happening, a lot of things going around, and now people are more exposed to the internet, and you can see even the children are now using a Zoom and all those technologies, right? And now they are interacting more and more. So I think it's better for the parents to have that open mindset and to be more open to their children. And just remember one thing, I mean, what I always say is that nothing is free on the internet. So if it says free, it's not free, definitely. So be careful and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you for your advice. And can we hear something from Miss Sashi? Miss Sashi, sorry.
I think they've had so much good advice at this point that there's really nothing I can add. But I think this is just something where people have to remember to treat people online the same way you treat them in person, and also protect yourself online the same way you'd protect yourself in person. So just remember those two things.
Thank you so much. And lastly, from Mr. Dayaratna, what would you like to share with our audience in terms of being safe?
Yeah, one common mistake lots of people do is that you say, look, I'm not a celebrity, I'm not a rich person, I don't have anything to, I mean, there's nothing a person can steal from me, so I don't need to really worry about cybersecurity. That's what majority of the people would think. But what you do not know is that the device that you use has an IP address, and that is for you. So what people exploit your IP address, there are called bots, which are sold in the deep and dark web, and they trade those IP addresses in thousands of IP addresses, and for even $3 or $5, depending on if the person needs to know from where you buying the IP or to whom you're selling. So based on that, your IP address is being traded. So obviously, why would someone needs your IP address is obviously to do something, a criminal activity. So as you very correctly said at the beginning, all cyber attacks can be traced. So the forensic investigation can find out. When that happens, it is your IP address which comes in light. So the first thing the law enforcement agency will do is to arrest you. So you will be behind bars and someone will have to fight for you to say that this is your IP, but it was not you who did it. So my simple question to you is, everyone is important. Your IP address can be traded. Don't have the thinking saying, look, I'm not a celebrity. I don't have money. I'm not an important person. Your IP is. So be careful on that.
Just a question. So in an instance, if you lost your phone or laptop, is it necessary to report it to the police, because somebody else could be using your IP, your device, and your IP would be the one that's being tracked, right? In case they use it for criminal activity. What do you think about that, Mr. Dayana?
It depends, because based on the device that you use. Now, some devices where you can do a remote wipe, where all your data can be erased. So it is very important, especially when you're using a smartphone, there is password protection in the phone. Some people do not put that because you can't be keep on, typing the password or facial recognition or thumb because you're lazy. But that will come handy when the case of you lose the phone, so that nobody can access to your data. It depends on, so if you have a lot of confidential data, or if you have a lot of stuff that you should not be sharing with other people, I suggest that you reporting is the best, so that you protect your side legally. Because if you do not report, say when you go and report, there is a police will take a statement. In the statement, there will be the date and the time. Now, subsequently, if an incident take place, and if you have reported, so obviously you will be safe in the court of law. But if not, so then you will like to again tell, look, why you did not report it. So you are going for unwanted issues thereafter. So answer to your question directly, it depends on the data that you have in your device that you lost. Based on that, you need to take the decision.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dayatna, and thank you to all our speakers for being with us today. It was a 1.5-hour session, and it's in the night time, and it's been quite long, but thank you for hanging on and giving us so much of information and knowledge. I'm pretty sure our viewers would have benefited. I, for one, enjoyed being a part of this session and to speaking with all of you. So once again, thank you for being with us. And before we conclude, I would like to acknowledge our sponsors for today. Our knowledge partner, CERT, the event partner, Flexus Labs, digital media partners, Daily Mirror Online and Lankadeepa Online. And we gathered a lot of information today. We discussed about what cyberbullying is, what cybersecurity is. We had a brief overview. We got statistics about the prevalence of cyberbullying in Sri Lanka. We can see how much it has increased drastically over the years. We also got an understanding about how the legislature in our country works, and there's so much that needs to be improved in the system so that we can all be protected. And now we know places where we need to seek help from, and that's what we have gained from this discussion today. So thank you all for joining in. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having us on board.
Thank you so much.